So just about everyone that is talking about hatred is wrong, and not in the my opinion is more important way, in the everyone is being a hypocritical or intellectually dishonest person kind of way. If you're even remotely informed in any subject, you know that this is hardly bothersome compared to what is happening in the real world. If you care about the arts, then you know that this is hardly new, and being offended by anything that comes from the art world is extremely counterproductive and misses the entire point of art. Getting offended by this game is how I could say in the nicest terms possible, you're not a very thoughtful person. Let me show you an example. So Sexy Phil says this.
And how it breaks down for me is hatred as a game seems disgusting. It appears to glorify mass murderers who commit terrible atrocities. Much of it seems to be gore for the sake of gore, and it's very likely I will not purchase this game.
Now this might not seem off to you, but if you watch this guy long enough, you know he likes his Call of Duty. One thing you might also note is that he does a lot of the same shtick that other gamers do, such as, oh, and damn, when he gets his kills in these games.
Mern turd! Woo!
Now you might be saying, but the context is different. The context is really important. Yeah, no, it's not important. It's a video game, it's not real, it's fiction. But let's pretend that you are in fact right and the context is really important. So what is the context for hatred? Well, it's not justifying mass murder like Phil says, and it's pretty clear that in fact he's demented and not in his right mind. Unless you believe that talking about something justifies it, and then you're retarded. So as someone who is completely disgusted with the premise of hatred, which is a dude going on a killing spree because he's messed up in the head, he's perfectly okay with playing Call of Duty. But the context here is a little more convoluted, but at the core of it, it's a lot of imperialism and a lot of implied racism. So to make a very long lecture shorter, this all boils down to a whole lot of killing a shit ton of brown and black people because they're subhuman. So from an objective point of view, we have an entire military force killing a lot of people because of their skin color and because America fucking rocks. And we have a guy killing a bunch of people because he wants to kill a bunch of people. Frankly, hatred comes off in a much better light because at the very least he's killing all races and sexes equally. So normally I wouldn't care that someone is playing Call of Duty no matter what context it might have because it's just a game. But I'm offended as a human when someone is preaching at me on top of his high horse while his face is sliding across the shit he's pretending to be above. And just so you know, this isn't something exclusive to Phil, but in fact everyone talking about how this game offends their sensibilities when they like other games about good old-fashioned killing. But let's make this little bit real just in case you believe you're under the impression I haven't thought this out. So we have this little military helicopter flying around when they spot a gathering of gentlemen. So what does the threatened military helicopter do to this sizable group of young people who are mostly unarmed and two under-equipped young gentlemen, but to open fire and brutally murder them? So all but a few are killed and the rest are mortally wounded and are crawling in the vain hope to find some safety. Then a first responder vehicle shows up. You know those things that we call ambulances here in the civil world? And the guys in the helicopters panic and open fire on it and killing everyone except the two children. Then to take it from just some flaky soldiers making a mistake and using a lot of excessive force to something far more fucked up, one guy crawls away and the gunner constantly dares the man to pick up a weapon in order to justify him opening fire on him again. Yeah, kinda fucking gross, isn't it? I'm going to spare you their actual deaths even though many different people talking about this deserve to see this. But this shows that if you're getting upset about a video game whose fictitious violence isn't even as bad when you compare it to other things in the real world, you better have at the very least got up in arms over this stuff. So now we're going to end with some of the comments that I've been reading and why they're pretty wrong. So I've read this comment a bunch about how you need to be a psychopath in order to play or enjoy these kinds of games, and I can't really argue with it because I just happen to be a psychopath. But that's irrelevant because there are many ways you can enjoy these things without jerking off and watching snuff porn. And high art happens to be one of them. One of the greatest moments in video game history just so happens to be one of the darkest, most depressing, and impactful scenes to ever be told within a video game narrative. Sometime into Spec Ops: The Line, the character you happen to be in control of accidentally burns 100 people alive using a nasty compound called white phosphorus. And this isn't something that happens in a cutscene. No, you aim the hellfire and you pull the trigger and cook all those people. And afterwards, you feel like a disgusting, pathetic wretch of a person, and you have to deal with that for a while. It's amazingly powerful and fits perfectly with the narrative and the message of the game. And even though it mortified me to the core, I thoroughly enjoyed this game, and especially that part. Because of the violence we're exposed to in this game, we are asked questions that are rarely asked of us, and what answers we come up with might just surprise you. And video games are not the only art form out there. And they all have just as much depraved crap in them as well. But one thing that pops into mind that reminds me of the stuff that hatred comes from a wonderful series called Gantz. So if you happen to not know, Gantz is a manga that's about killing a lot of stuff. Then there comes the mother of all scenes. Ignoring all kinds of context, the single guy goes on a massive killing spree for incredibly vague reasons to him that he only speculates and hunches as to what's going to happen. Then the scene actually happens and it's just amazing. The artwork is excellently done and the pacing is perfect. It makes you feel worried for all the other characters in the series, and there is real tension coming from these pages. And the scene can't even be called mindless gratuitous violence because of how well established it was. The character motives for doing all this are well established, and if you haven't read the series, you know that Izumi would probably go on and do this again if he could. The scene itself is necessary for the progression of the story. It established many other characters and how they react to all of this, and it even gives some more context clues to how the Gantz balls work. This is probably my favorite scene of all of manga, not just because I'm jerking off to the violence. And then you have the many examples of art that are directly referencing or covering real life events. Now I know a lot of people scoff that at the very least, hatred wasn't based on real life events. You might agree with this rationalization, but if you put a little brain power into it, you might come to the same conclusion I did, and that these people are not upset at the potential mishandling of a sensitive topic. It's something a little worse than that. Alright, so let's just say I'm a complete douchebag and I post a video of me disrespecting Jews because they were too wimpy to get massacred. Bitch ass Jews, maybe if you got yourself ripped like me, your bitch asses could have stood against Hitler and not gotten yourself genocided. Hashtag no glutes brah. And while that is an extremely poor taste, it still does spread the message that the Holocaust happened. And if we don't remember the past, then it's going to get repeated again, and again, and again, and again, until we stop committing genocide because of how fun it is. So the spread of awareness, no matter how depraved it is important. And the way people react to this is a little more messed up. Taken with a bit of liberty, it's nearly like these people are saying they don't care what happens in the world so as long as they don't know about it, which is understandable but completely cowardly and pathetic. Two examples of art that comes from real-world events is The Waltz with Bashir and Insane Clown Posse's The Tower. The first one is about an ex-Israeli soldier coming to terms with his action in the Saberi and the Shatili massacre during the First Lebanon War, and the second being a song about an ex-Marine going to a clock tower on a university and shooting and killing dozens of people. Both based on real-life events and both spread awareness about the subject matter and have a message that deserves, at the very least, to be listened to. And without art pieces like this, very few people would know about the events that really ought to be common knowledge, like the fact that thousands of American citizens are dying slow and painful deaths due to nuclear testing that happened in Utah, or the horrific conditions that the soldiers suffered during the Vietnam War both during and after they left active duty, or about 9/11 responders not getting medical assistance for their health problems that are caused by their involvement of that day. The list goes on, and to hear this come out of people's mouth that having this based on something real would bother them more really saddens me. And remember, they couldn't possibly have a problem with how the material is being handled because the game isn't even out yet. You can't know anything until you play it. And this is why hatred being controversial for you comes with the added label of also being retarded. This is very simple stuff, and I have no idea why everyone perceives that it's a really good idea to form an opinion about something before they consume it that's more complex than, maybe I will, or that's not for me. The sad thing is, this is one of the largest problems facing human intellect today. To judge something before having enough information is such a human universal, it's omnipresent. All the way from the members of Mensa down to the redneck meth dealer, this is a common problem. So there's no shame in admitting it, only in not working to correct future potential mistakes. So remember, don't judge a book by its cover. Until you've read that book, and then you have all the intellectual freedom to critique it how you like. So will hatred be a terrible pile of crap that mishandles the subject matter like a hot potato? Yeah, maybe. But that's a discussion that will happen after the release of the game.